Hey everyone, I'm just listening because I'm suddenly realizing I still have this set on the saxophone quartet version, which is fun. So, hi everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here, and welcome to the Music Masterclass. And we are hearing the saxophone quartet rendition of the theme music here. Um, we're going to be talking more about our Christmas music today, and I'll be playing through some examples, some things that people have uploaded, give some of my thoughts on how we're choosing chords for those, and whatever else comes up. So let me pop up my comments and make sure I don't have any major problems showing up here. People checking in, great, and yeah, I just want to maybe get talking here about things. So I'm going to take a look at some of the pieces that have been posted uh, when people have posted uh, in the Musicianship Skills Workshop for these various different Christmas songs, and I want to talk more about chords and chords, that can be chosen and the different things that we might take into consideration. So I did a whole lesson on this Monday where I went through and talked about how to take your 1-4-5, your basic simple version, and expand it basically to become something more like what we expect. So that's really what I'm going to be talking about here is uh, what we expect. And so for people who haven't been necessarily following everything that I've been talking about, having to do with this whole chord symbol Christmas business, what I'm after is finding the just right chords. The just right chords. So what I mean by just right is, it's possible to have chords that are too simple and therefore sound dumb. They're easy to play, but they don't sound good. There's ones that are really, really accurate to whatever the original music was, if it was a hymn. And those are usually just too many chords because that style involves chord changing every beat. Or it could be that these are chords that work really well if you're a creative jazz musician trying to do all the fancy things with chords that we like to do in jazz, but they don't translate well to just your basic people wanting to sing a song and having some chord accompaniment. That's what I'm aiming for. The basic chords that sound right for a song, but are relatively easy for most people to be able to play. That's what we're aiming for here. So I'm going to be, anytime I play through something and we take a look at how it's working, I'm going to be kind of looking at it through that lens. Not whether these chords are good of their own, on their own merits or not, but to what extent they capture what I feel should be captured. And I will say, this is me. I'm talking about my own feelings about how these chord progressions should work because if there was only one way to do it, then everyone would just be working off the same chords and every book would have the same chords and we wouldn't be having this discussion. So anyhow, I'm going to flip up a couple things. And the first thing I want to do, since it's right here and since Michael just checked in, I want to talk about Michael's thing here because this is basically an exception to what I'm talking about. And what I mean by an exception is it's going to be it's a jazz piece, and there's no way to have chords for it that make sense without honoring the fact that it is, in fact, a jazz piece. So I'm going to I want to view it on MuseScore.com, but my goal here is, there we go. I was looking for I knew I had it sized decently. So, my keyboard okay? Someone let me know if the keyboard is sounding okay. And I'm going to just play through this, and I'm going to play through it relatively simply. By relatively simply, I mean I'm not going to try to do all sorts of super complicated things. I'm just going to play the chords the way I, as a, relatively experienced pianist, might play them. So I'm not going to go all wild on it, but I'm also not just going to play F major 7, right? I'm gonna do things that I think make sense. So y'all can feel, y'all, if you want, can sing along if you know the song or if you feel like sight reading. But I'm just gonna play the melody and the chords, and then we can talk a little bit. So here we go, 2, 3. All right. Beautiful job on on that transcription, Michael. So this is the song by Vince Guaraldi. That's a big part of the Charlie Brown Christmas. For I assume anyone in the United States is familiar with that. It's possible it's not as familiar outside the states, depending on how the Charlie Brown licensing works. But that's the deal. It's from Charlie Brown Christmas. So. This is, Vince Guaraldi was a jazz pianist, and this is a jazz piece in many ways that really you can't make it not be jazz without totally just like eliminating everything that was interesting about the piece to begin with. And so the trick is to figure out, well, what should stay and what should go and so forth. And so we talked a little bit about this in the discussion there in the community, but it's worth talking about a little bit here. So first of all, right off the bat, the melody has the major 7th in it. That's as good enough reason as any to call that chord a major 7th. Now, I will say, in most songs that I'm going to be working on, talking about, I am not going to want to put a major 7th on my one chord in the music. I might play it as a jazz pianist, but that's my right as a jazz pianist to put major 7ths. I'm not normally going to write out that major 7th when I'm writing in this particular style, but it's right there in the melody. And realistically, if people tried to play that, if people just played triads, it might sound a little disappointing. So I think writing in the 7ths on these chords absolutely makes sense. And that is definitely a major 7th. And now the next question came up about this next chord, because the chord is E flat 7, the melody is the sharp 11. And the question is it worth notating that sharp 11 in the chord symbol or not? And the answer is, I don't know, flip a coin on that one. I think for the purpose that I'm talking about, we don't need the sharp 11. It's there in the melody. And if I play literally this, I'm playing literally E flat 7, right? 1, 3, 5, 7. And I'm playing the sharp 11 in the melody. That's not far from the right voicing. That's a reasonable jazz voicing right there. I think I added an F a couple of times. I added a 9th, or maybe I added a C, a 13th. And as jazz pianists, I add 9ths, I add 13ths, and I'm sure Vince did as well. But just calling it E flat 7 and letting the melody be the sharp 11, that's fine. And as a point for any pianists or anyone thinking about accompanying from this, just because you see a chord symbol say E flat 7 sharp 11, that doesn't mean you have to play the sharp 11. This is kind of an interesting conundrum that happens when we're reading chord symbols. How many of those notes to play? How many of them not to play? My observation is when you see it say sharp 11 in the chord symbol, take a look at the melody. And if the melody is the sharp 11, which often it will be, if someone bothered to write that into the chord symbol, chances are it's in the melody. Chances are decent, maybe 51% chance that it's there in the melody. Then you don't have to play it yourself. Now you're doubling the melody. That's another thing. If I was playing this for a sing-along, not that this is a big sing-along kind of song, I don't know that I would be playing that A at all. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't, but I certainly wouldn't feel compelled to, and I wouldn't feel compelled to put it on the top. So if I'm singing, Christmas time is here, right? I'm not playing the A at all. I'm letting my voice have the A, and maybe that's a mistake because my voice isn't that good, but here I don't need to double it, and I certainly don't need to play the melody everywhere else. So if I'm not playing the melody everywhere else, and that's an important accompaniment concept to realize, you don't have to play the melody. In fact, most of the time it's best not to play the melody, especially if you're accompanying a solo singer, because they might want to take some liberties. If you are taking liberties with the melody, then it's getting in your way for the accompanist to be playing the melody also. Now, if you're accompanying a large group of people or a group of people who maybe don't know the melody, then playing it for them can be useful. So, yeah, if you are trying to actually accompany people, you have to sort through all those things. But what I am saying is accompaniment does not necessarily mean playing the melody, and if you're not going to play the melody, well, then be consistent about it. You basically never play the melody. So Charlie Brown Christmas wasn't familiar to Nicholas until you discovered Vince Guaraldi, and you heard the music before you saw the special. Yeah, that makes sense. So that's my observation about that. And then if the same observation happens for all these chords, I think notating this one, B flat minor, as just a triad. I'm not saying Vince didn't play a seventh. I don't know that he did or not, but I think I would just be consistent and just put sevenths everywhere, including on that F chord at the end. Since you're putting sevenths everywhere else, and we're calling this F major 7, you might as well call that one F major 7. So the next question was about that C7, and I actually cheated it. I didn't play the E except once just to try it. This clash between the fourth on the C7 right here, the fourth in the melody against the third on the C7, that's kind of a clash. And so typically we wouldn't play that. We'd play this as a sus chord, as we would call it, suspended, even though it's not necessarily a true classical suspension, and then resolve to the F major. Now, I'm hedging on this thing as I say this. I think this is the right sound, but I'm also aware that I want to say it's "Oh Christmas Tree," where one of those Vince Guaraldi songs. Not that "Oh Christmas Tree" is written by Vince Guaraldi, but his arrangement that he played for the Charlie Brown Christmas. It's either "Oh Christmas Tree" or it's not, but one of those he does play that kind of voicing. Let me think. Oh, that's what he does. No, he plays this chord. I'm mistaken. It is a sus flat 9 chord that he uses a lot. I knew there was something that was like ringing a bell about that chord. Anyhow, so I would probably notate that C7 sus just to avoid that clash there. Anytime it's got to be a 5 chord, but the fourth of the chord, basically the tonic of the key, is in the melody, it's typically you want to notate it sus. And at this point, you've got to give up on it being easy for beginners to play. I think you've just got to have to accept that we're dealing with 7th chords, we're dealing with major 7th chords, and it's going to be not as simple as Jingle Bells, and that's just the way it is. And so, therefore, I don't think sus is worth avoiding. I would not say so. That's a good idea. Favorite time of year. So I don't like that as a cheating substitute thing. Not cheating, but you know what I mean. It's because it's a 2-5-1, and I want that 5 in there. I want the bassist to be able to play that 5 if someone's trying to accompany on bass. So I don't want to bend over too far backwards. Just to make it simple. If the piece needs this chord, then it's going to have that chord. And that's a 5 chord there, and the tonic is in the melody, and there's no getting around the fact that a sus chord is the way to pull it off. So that's my thinking about that. So then bridge, again, we're going to have a G flat 7, where not again G flat 7, but again it's a sharp 11 in the melody. And again, here we can get away with simplifying it. Yes, the chord is G flat 7, sharp 11, but we lose nothing by leaving out the sharp 11 because it's in the melody. And so the melody provides it, and it doesn't create any problems to do that. So that's, I guess, the distinction I make. With the C7, if someone just plays the same C7, it actually creates a bit of a clash that we don't need. But G flat 7, sharp 11, just simplifying it to G flat 7, we lose nothing. It just means that we didn't double the melody, and that's fine. So yeah, that's good. And the comment that I had made, that something that always bothered me about playing the song is this sequence. So at this point, this chord is kind of dissonant against it, but that's just the way it is. And then this is also kind of dissonant against that chord, and I think that's just what it is, and it's just like this little temporary half a beat dissonance, and it's just okay. So yeah, I think again, when we're dealing with a jazz kind of sound, you can't de-jazzify it and have it make sense anymore. So if you're going to tackle a jazz piece, just tackle the jazz piece, but make the simplifications that you can get away with, like not bothering to write in sharp 11s. Anyhow, that's my thoughts on that piece. Good job, Michael. And so, yeah, I want to talk about some of the other things that I've posted here, and then just maybe go through a couple more examples on my own, because I think, oh yeah, so I said I wanted to have a collective discussion about keys. So this key, so here's the thing. If we want to be, first of all, if I'm not mistaken, this happens in 2 different keys, right? They do it instrumentally and they do it vocally, and maybe in 2 different keys. I don't remember. You can remind me about that. But yeah, in general, F then won't be a very beginner guitar friendly key. We've already left the world of beginner guitar friendly chords, and so I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. And then here's the other thing. That modulation to D flat for the bridge, no matter what key you pick that you think is going to be easy to start in, the bridge is going to be hard. And that's just the way it is, right? So, that is absolutely just the way it is. So even if I said, hey, C is nice and easy, and go, that's all well and good, but when I come to that bridge, it's going to be, it's going to have all these A flat major 7 and D flat 7s. It's going to be messy no matter what. And that whole chromatic passage there, right? This passage, that whole passage of descending minor chords, there's no way to make that simple. It's going to be that if you started in C. And so it's still going to be a little bit messy. So let's talk, though, about vocal range a little bit. And here's one where I would love input from those of you who sing in choirs. And yes, no, definitely Schroeder, not Linus, with the toy piano, definitely. So those of you who actually sing in vocal ensembles might have some more practical insight into range. I know individual singers and their ranges. I know my own range. I know what textbooks tell me about choirs, but I don't have the practical experience of singing in choirs. So here's what I will say. In general, sopranos, if you're going to write for a soprano, this is about the range that you'd want to go with, from middle C to the E above. Yes, technically sopranos can sing higher than that E, but it gets high and squeaky and shouty, and you don't necessarily understand the lyrics. And yet a lot of sopranos really can't get very far below that C without getting all whispery. And so this, or maybe this, this kind of as your range. And that is the thing. A lot of songs will have a range of just over an octave. What's the range of this one? That E is the highest note of the song. That D is maybe the lowest. So, yeah, that is the case. So the range of this song is barely more than an octave. It's an octave and a step. So an octave and a step, octave and a third, octave and a fourth or so. A ninth, 10th, or 11th. Those are typical song ranges. So this is a very comfortable soprano range, but it could profitably be moved down about a step. So if you're thinking that F is too hard, well, then moving it down a half step for E would be okay. Moving it down a whole step for E flat would be okay, but that doesn't simplify the chords. We'd have to move it, if we wanted to move it all the way into a easy key, supposedly, like D, that means moving it down a minor third. So now my range is this. Yeah, that's reasonable for sopranos. So the key of D could be reasonable for sopranos. So yeah, the thing is, my observation here isn't about what's a good singer can reach. It's about what's comfortable for singing and having the lyrics understood, and not, and just working in this sort of sing-along kind of thing. It's one thing to say that so and such a singer can, get the Queen of the Night high F there, but you don't want to hear Christmas Time Is Here sung up in that range, right? It's got to be a range that's not just I can reach it, but balances well and doesn't and works for most sopranos, not just most people who are in a professional choir, but most people who would consider themselves sopranos, even if they've never thought about, maybe I shouldn't even say consider themselves. Most people that if you listen to them and decide they're soprano and then ask, well, what's comfortable? I think what we'll find is going above that E is not wise. And I will say the same about tenor. For tenor, that this E is a good, reasonable upper range, and that sure, any good tenor can hit that F. What I have found is that asking for any more than the F above is asking for trouble. I know a lot of people who consider themselves tenors who really struggle to get to that G, and then others who don't, but then they're louder than everyone else on that G because that's how you get to it. Or you switch to falsetto and it changes the whole sound quality. So there's a difference between what you can possibly write for and what's actually going to be comfortable for the average person. So I would say sopranos here, tenors here, without going too far. Yeah, and so, as soon as you talk about first soprano and second soprano, you're talking professional choir. I'm talking about family sing-alongs or, things like that. So I'm trying to, because it's still the case that we're going to have people with a variety of ranges, but we can't, we don't want to produce sheet music in 12 different keys. We want to pick 2 keys, a high key and a low key. And that's what most songbooks do. They produce a high voice version and a low voice version. So I would be looking to orient your music so that the high key version sits between C and E, and then that works for pretty much most sopranos, and an octave lower for pretty much most tenors. And then the low key version may be somewhere around here. So that altos will sing it between G and B, basses between the lower G and B. If you figure out what key, because this doesn't mean the key of G, right? This song, in order to have that range from D to E, this song was in F, and that was the range. So you want to think about what key actually makes those the notes. You don't just say, this is the range of the song, therefore it's in G. No, you have to think about, well, what key? Like if I wanted to do a low voice version of this, then I might pick, so this song goes from basically scale degree 6 to scale degree 7. So if I wanted to place it here, that is the key of C. Scale degree 6, scale degree 7. So I would call F a good high voice key, and C a good low voice key for this song. For another song, C, a song in the key of C, this might literally be the range in the key of C, and then this is a good high voice key. So you have to consider the range of the song when figuring out what the key is, because the goal is to put the song in that high range or that low range, and then figure out what key that actually is. So there's that. So Graham, you've been participating here. I want to talk about your Mistletoe and Wine, which I still haven't heard, but I want to play this song because I think it's going to be interesting. I'm going to play it as written and see what what we hear. So I don't know what the tempo is, but I'm playing it at a comfortable tempo. Ah, wait a minute. Okay. Huh? Nice song. Yeah, I totally do not know this song. Feel free to tell me about it. So, yeah, thanks for letting me know it's going to need to go fast. Let me just play it a little bit quicker to see if it changes my mind about the first few bars or anything. Okay, no, I still feel the same way about the chords, and I don't know if that's too fast or still not fast enough. But okay, so to me, most of these chords make a whole lot of intuitive sense. And if I were looking at this melody without knowing the chords, I probably would have guessed some pretty similar things. But I'm going to make some observations about it, not based on listening to it, because sometimes knowing what makes sense, knowing what is the expected thing can help you in transcribing something. If you're listening to it and you're trying to figure out the chords, knowing what it probably should be, then you can just check, well, was it that? So my first observation is the beginning part, back and forth between 1 and 5. That all is hard to argue with, right? I mean, yeah, someone could reharmonize that and add more chords, but that all sounds totally logical. Now, the next thing, going to the E minor chord, I love that. That sounds great. And so I'm going to assume that actually happens and that it isn't more G, D, G, D, because of course it could have been more G, D, G, D. But so this is an observation I made in this week's lesson that, yeah, if you're going to start off thinking 1s, 4s, and 5s, that's all well and good. But if some chord is you're listening to it and going, well, gee, that doesn't sound right. If it was a 1 chord, well, if it was a 1 chord that you were trying to play and it doesn't sound right, well, probably really it's meant to be a 3 or a 6. So if my first cut at this was to play the 1 chord because it fits, but then you listen to it and say that doesn't sound like the recording, then the thing to do is ask yourself, well, should it have been 3? And then you would try that and say, well, this G kind of clashes with the B minor, the 3 chord, and if that sounds like the recording, great. But if you play the 6, you realize, oh, well, then that totally makes sense. So I think I will go ahead. Thanks for that link. I'm just going to go ahead and play that just to see. There's going to be a little ad up first, I'm sure. Oh, maybe not.
there's a new beginning. Dreams of Santa, dreams of snow, fingers numb, faces aglow. It's Christmas time, mistletoe and wine.
Still G.
Children singing Christian rhyme, with logs on the fire, gifts on the tree. A time to rejoice in the good that we see. A time.
All right. So yeah, really nice. So different key. Yeah. Yeah, so they're doing an A. So yeah, you're right. It absolutely did go to the sixth chord there. So one thing that I'm seeing is that you actually have quite a few more chords, right? I mean, like this whole section, Christmas time, mistletoe and wine, children singing, was all just the one chord. And then Christian rhyme or Christian rhyme is how it kind of came out. Da, da, da. This is all just a 5. And I think this is like another good observation. In a pop song type of setting, they've got all sorts of stuff going on in the accompaniment, drums and synthesizers and basses and guitars and whatnot. You can have only one chord and make it sound more interesting. But like that section right here, all of that 5. All of that 5 chord there works in that setting, I would claim, largely because it's got drums laying down this kind of backbeat thing happening, and it's got other instruments and other sounds happening, and to literally just play on the piano and just sit on that same chord. Yes, we could do all sorts of things if you're a good pianist and, add more stuff to it to make it be more interesting. But I think exactly, Graham, what you've done here, just basically expanding that, however many bars it was, 8 bars worth of a 5 chord, you've basically turned it into back and forth, 2, 5, 2, 5. That makes sense. So this is something I hadn't really talked about yet, but this makes a really good example of. The original was very simple harmonically, and I'm not looking to make some complicated jazz reharmonization, but I want to make it work for accompaniment, and sitting on one chord, especially if you think about like a guitar player just strumming that same D7 chord over and over again, that's going to sound dumb. It's not going to sound like the recording, because the recording didn't play the 5 chord that way. It had more stuff going on. So this idea of finding alternating 2-5, that is what I talked about in this week's lesson, that a 5 can be expanded to a 2-5. And I talked about doing it if it sounded like you needed it. Here, I don't know that you need it, but I think it was a good call. So I feel like I totally feel like that was the right call, and that was a good example of something that's going to be a good general principle. Now, there was 2 places that I want to talk about in terms of where my gut feeling tells me something else is possible. So one of them is right here. So this going directly from 6 to 5 like that, I totally believe it, and I think I heard that on the recording. I want to hear it again because I'm curious. Yeah, that's all that happens. I got to get the right key. Okay, so there's a couple observations here. The accompaniment stops, and then there's no more motion. So it's hard to say if there was going to be another chord in there, but maybe in the next verse. Yeah, so same thing. And I just got really lucky that I picked exactly the right spot in the song. Anyhow, what I'm talking about here is wondering if, because anytime you see 2 chords a whole step apart like that, going down, there's an opportunity for there to have been a secondary dominant in between them. So, in other words, told is past, da, da, da. I would want to ask myself, is that making sense? And I want to do it in that key. And I think not. I think the pop song, and here's again, the last piece I looked at was a jazz piece, and I said you don't want to destroy the jazzness of it. Here, you don't want to destroy the popness of it either. And if going directly from 6 to 5 is what they did, and it's going to work, then by all means do it. But that's the question I would be asking myself. Does it make sense to put an A chord there so that I have some circle of fifths? That's a legitimate question, and I think I've answered it to my own satisfaction that, yeah, I might do that if I was reharmonizing it, but I think I'm going to leave it alone. So the next question I have, though, is about this quick D here. This doesn't feel like that's where it belongs. That felt awkward to me to play. It felt weird to come to the D so quickly. I was ready for the D, the next measure. Yeah, now, so personally, Graham, this, to me, is a lovely jazz sound, having the ninth in it. It's not a clash, it's a lovely jazz sound, but again, not necessarily the sound of this kind of music. So I wouldn't reject it based on the sound alone, but on its appropriateness to the genre, because this sound is all over. Christmas time is here, right? And pretty much any other song like that. So anyhow, I want to hear this spot right here, Faces Aglow, and see if I really hear the 5 chord happen that quickly. Because even if it happens, I'm going to say, yeah, it's not going to work for me.
Carolus in the old is past, there's a new beginning. Dreams of Santa, dreams of snow, fingers numb.
Okay, I get it. Okay. So what really happened is it's a 5 chord right away. It's not even a 5 chord a measure later. It's this key change business is messing with me, but so this comes right back to G. And then is a 5 chord right away there, I think. So I want to hear that again, and I got to change my key. Yeah, it's just going to be a little bit of a pain to hear the different key.
Dreams of snow, fingers numb,
Yeah, so there's a sus chord there. So actually, your melody is off. It's not ba-da-da-dum, it's bum-ba-da-dum. So it really is in this key. Ba-da-da-dum. So that's part of what's happening. Maybe in another verse he sings it that other way. Let me just do that one more time. Yeah, it's the same pitch twice. 3. It's ba-da-da-dum, 7, 7, 6, 5. So that's why this A7. So you have that A7 D9 there real quick to try to fit what you have as the melody. But that's the problem, is the melody wasn't right. And my clue to that was it felt awkward to have that chord change in the middle of the bar. So my instinct turned out to not be right about this measure. It really is exactly what you see. But my instinct was right here. There's something a little off. And so this is why having a preconceived notion of what makes sense can help you spot errors, even if you in my case, didn't know the song at all. Something didn't add up, and so it made me want to check my own work. So you can work out something and figure it out by ear, and then while you're looking at it, if something doesn't make sense, that's the spot to go back and double check your work. You say, well, this doesn't really make as much sense on paper as it did. I wouldn't have been questioning anything about those first 4 bars. Nothing about it made me suspect anything was off, but that spot made me suspect. Well, let's go back and double check it. So being able to analyze your own transcription can help you spot places where you want to double check. Did I get that right or did I not get that right? And that's really the only spot where I had that feeling. Now, I did have a sense that is that the spot, I guess? Yeah, that this whole Dreams of Santa. I have the same observation here about this going from 2 directly to 1, that's not. I mean, it can happen. It's just like this going directly from 6 to 5. Going down by whole step definitely happens, and it's going to happen more in pop music than in any other type of music. Not going to happen as much in jazz, not going to happen as much in classical music. Going down by whole step. But still, it made me want to check again. Is that the right chord? And I think my answer is no, it's something a little different than what you have there. So I'm going to change again to play it in the key. So what you have is that transposed. I suppose I could use the transpose button on my keyboard so you all can see my fingers playing the notes that we have here, but take my word for it. This is Dreams of Santa, Dreams of Snow. That's that transposed. But now I want to hear what's actually happening in that spot, because I think it's a little different.
Dreams of snow.
Yeah.
Dreams of Santa. There's a new beginning. Dreams of Santa.
It goes to 1 right there is my observation.
Beginning. Dreams of Santa. Dreams of snow.
I'm listening for the bass, the left hand of the piano and or an actual bassist there, and what I'm hearing is it going 4 to 1 directly without that 2 in between there. And then that makes more sense. Now there is something else going on in the voicings. One is that this 4 chord I think is voiced with at least one of the bass instruments staying on the A.
Dreams
yeah.
Of Santa, new beginning. Dreams of Santa, dreams of snow.
Yeah. So and then 1. So there is a 4 to 1, but the 4 kind of holds on to the 1 in the bass. So this is maybe more of a C over G, and then this G chord happens directly there. So this is another one of the things where just playing through it made me wonder, is this accurate? Let me double check. And yeah, everything else I think made total sense, and you made some deliberate changes there that made total sense. And yeah, nothing about those made me even think that you had made a change, because it made so much sense. I just assumed it was the original, and that was a nice improvement you made on the original. So those are some observations about this. That understanding of what's going on can help you get the right answer. And then if it's not the right answer, if you listen, you might, well, my brain tells me it should be this, but when I listen, I realize no, it's not. It's this other thing. Well, then you just go with it. So yeah, that was a nice exercise. Thanks, Graham, for that example. I'm gonna take another version here. Oh, that one's I can't get to. Sorry about that. Because there were a couple other pieces posted here by a couple other people I know. Santa Baby, that's Michael's, and that was another good one. That's, another one of the pop songs. But I think I wanted to find. Oh yeah, it was Miriam, and you had. So let me find where you posted those, because you posted like an interesting variety of pieces that were not necessarily all holiday pieces, but they were something. So yeah, here we go. Brother John, yeah, that was and then Happy Birthday. Well, let's take a look at Brother John, because it's an interesting thing. So this is a song that comes from yet another type of tradition, which it's a folk song tradition that's really. Can I get to this here? I think I can. Oh yeah. Here we go. So it's coming from a children's song kind of tradition, a folk tradition, but a very simple folk tradition. And so here, the as she observes in her original comments that I've now just lost, or no, that they're not. They're right here. Her original comments was, yeah, she does say somewhere that I'm not seeing it now. The comment was that you could just get away with it with a 1 and a 5. So now I'm not seeing that. But that is absolutely true. Songs like this could be totally played with just a 1 and a 5. And so I could totally have just played. Or here, that C in the melody. Bum, bum. I tried to play this as a 5 chord, but it had a C in the melody. It's that same situation we had with Christmas Time is here. If I want to put a 5 chord in the middle of that measure, I have to honor the fact that it's going to then, with the tonic in the melody, I would have to voice it as a sus chord. And then that would sound quite nice. That would be acceptable. But if I try to go and then a whole measure of 5, I can get away with that. I can totally get away with that. Right? A song like this, frankly, it's really all one. Is really what's going on. It's really all one because it's a round, right? And these things are going to overlap, but it's really more like this. It's like little really fast. Because this F here, when you think about this as a round, this F is going to be heard at the same time as that D, right? Because, the first person who sings, are you sleeping, brother, when they get to there, is going to, when the first person is singing there, the second person coming in is going to be singing you. And of course, anyone who's French knows this as Frère Jacques. Many of us know it as Frère Jacques also, same basic piece, but translated to English here and then with French lyrics below. So that F is going to be heard at the same time as D. And then if a third voice comes in, that the first person is on the G, while the second one is on the F, and the third is on the D. So we clearly have a G7 chord happening on beat 2 of every measure in a literal translation of this. So every measure is going to have that 1 5 1. 1 5 1. 1 5 1. Oops, I tried to play her chord. 1 right? It's going to have 1 5 1 just like she has here. Every single measure. That's the literal translation of it. But now we're talking, well, this is kind of like those hymns that I was talking about. Like when I went through and did "O Come All Ye Faithful" and talked about that I didn't really want to have I didn't want a different chord on every single note because that's great hymn style. It's not great lead sheet accompaniment style. So similarly here, writing C, G, C, C, G, C, C, G, C, first of all, it get boring to keep having the same measure over and over again because that works in the round setting, but it doesn't work in this setting. But also it's too many chords. So the idea that you're going to have to reimagine this a little bit to make it work, and therefore add chords that weren't there to make it work. So Miriam's definitely onto something here in choosing to do that. So now I'm going to play what she has actually written. All right. So I like the sound of this. I mean, it doesn't sound like it sounds with the round. It's got a slight jazziness to it, but it's still very diatonic, right? I didn't need a single black key to play this, right? It was all diatonic white key stuff. And it has this nice descending motion, right? The C chord and then the tenor, if I think of a tenor voice singing, and then the bass also going from like that descending line in the bass is a powerful thing, and I like that a lot. Now, the clash of this F against, okay, so this F is actually clashing in Brother John. Brother John. This F clashes both against the E. And when I say clash, I should define what a clash is. I mean, a clash is anything you don't like the sound of, but specifically, the clashes we usually worry about are half-step clashes, not so much whole step. So Graham, when you were talking about the B against the A, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that. That's not that kind of clash. That's all over the place. In a lot of music, actually, a whole step above a chord tone is usually a much more consonant dissonance. In the scale of dissonances, that's a much more acceptable dissonance than half-step dissonances. So that was a little problematic to me, but I could have accepted it if not for the tritone against the bass. And I've got this F is dissonant against 2 of the 3 notes. And it's actually dissonant against the G, too. It's dissonant against all 3 notes in that E minor chord. So you could say, well, it's a passing tone, you can get away with it. But you definitely have to ask yourself that question. Can I get away with it? And I don't know. It's pushing it for me. At a slow tempo, I might have to carefully, I don't know, I'd have to carefully think about how I arpeggiate that E chord to de-emphasize that clash. And yet, it makes total sense as a bass line goes. So it kind of makes me want to just try other. If I called it G7 instead with a B in the bass, and let the E be the non-chord tone, maybe I'm slightly happier with it. I don't know, but these are the questions that I would be asking myself here. Because for this piece, I don't know that we're going to find a really basic good answer, because the right answer is just those 1 and 5s over and over again, and yet it's not going to sound good. So we're going to have to be creative with this to make it work well. So I think her answer works well. It just has that dissonance that's a little questionable. And then that's all good. I like that. That is definitely a nice description of an A minor 7 chord. And here, yes, there's an F for a moment against the E, but there it's not strong enough for me to care about it. Here, the whole quarter note, I cared a little more. And that F, again, also is dissonant against the B. But this F being dissonant against the E for half a beat, I have less problem with. And so, again, when I think about what's possible, so I love that descending bass line, but I do wonder about coming back to the C right away. Because here my brain is telling me, going directly from 6 to 1, that sounds weak. I want a 5 in there somewhere. So I'm inclined to wonder if there's another possibility here. So one possibility is, if I'm going to I don't know. I tried that. I didn't love it. But I tried to put a 2 chord here so I could have 6 going to 2. 6, and then I could do a little quick 2-5-1 there. So that way I still get some circle of fifths motion. Because what happens here is we have nice diatonic motion, a nice stepwise bass line, but we don't have any circle of fifths. Well, I guess E minor to A minor is circle of fifths. So we have that, but we don't have circle of fifths into our cadence here. And that's, like, I'm wondering, is there a way around that a little bit? And so the other thing I would wonder is, well, what if I had somehow the 2 and the 5 in this measure? So if I went, That's what I would do personally. Again, we've totally left the world of the original here, because the original really is 151 151. No, don't denying that at all. But I think I'm going to play it that I'm going to put my 2/5 in this measure, so that way I'm going to get 3 6 2 5 1. Circle of fifths all the way with the descending bass line, and I'm going to live with that little bit of dissonance. And I think that's going to work for me. We could maybe have this not repeat itself. Maybe it could be more like I don't know, I'm just trying some diatonic things in here to make that part not be as repetitive there, but I just went to a 4 chord because it's a chord that supports that C. Or it could be, how about this? 1 6 2 5 1. I could do that also. Lots of things I could do in there. But this part here was still bothering me a little bit, not so much because of the dissonance, but because of the lack of motion. I felt like something could have changed there. And I wonder if actually letting the bass go down to an E would have made me happier. Nope. I think I heard it go into A minor already. No, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Yeah, I don't know what it is there, but the problem is inherently that is not the right chord. We're trying to make it work, and it does work, but it's just I'm trying to make it seem a little more in keeping with what I expect. But I think just leaving it. This is one of those things where if I found the right thing to do in the accompaniment with how I orchestrate things and voice things and create moving lines, then. But I do like the 6 going to 2 5 to 1. That to me feels that feels like it's making a lot of sense to me now, and so I personally would make that one change and perhaps nothing else if I were doing this. But yeah, I would accept the fact that that's not the original song. If I wanted to make my own version of this, I might have just tried to make 1 6 2 5s work. 1 6 2 5. 1 6 2 5. 1 1 6 2 5 1, or something like that, right? So I might have tried something like that, but I like that diatonic version there too. Anyhow, thanks for all the music that you guys have been submitting, guys and gals. So yeah, next week I'm going to do something. It's there will be more music. So keep posting some music. I want to get some more songs to just go through, and then we'll try some things, right? We'll sing ourselves. We won't be able to sing together because the internet's not that good. But I can play some accompaniment, and we can talk, and we can make some music, and just have a little bit of a Christmas party here next week. So that's my plan. So that said, we get to hear the saxophone quartet again, and I know it says clarinets, but I remember changing it to saxophone while I was doing the cafe yesterday. So anyhow, hope you all enjoyed the session. We got to look at a number of things that come up doing these chord symbols, and I would love to get some more music submitted so we can just have a nice range of songs, and we'll just be checking some of that out. And I hope everyone has a great holiday. If I don't get to talk to you next week, I mean, I'm going to be here, but if you're not here, then have a great holiday. And yeah, MuseScore 4 is out. By all means, download that. Have a ball, and we'll be talking soon. Bye.